Hi, welcome. My name is Patrick Melville, or Non-Irish Paddy, and I have a passion to inspire and guide people about mental health. I use my own story, being diagnosed with terminal cancer in 2017, stage 4 malignant brain tumour, and also my expertise as a mental health first aider for England, mental health first aid England instructor. And I run workshops and research to help understand. My passion is to guide and inspire companies and delegates to understand what mental health is and to help them avoid burnout and take away the stigma. A key theme at the moment is of mental health is about loneliness. And of course, the theme is connection. We are connected, and we're going to come into that further. But I'm really pleased to having Carlton here, we're going to have a lovely chat. Thank you, Carlton, about these themes I've just mentioned. And let's start by talking about loneliness and connection. Carlton, what does that mean to you? Can you share your thoughts?
I mean, I think there's a lot of ways I could go into that, but I think initially the conversation needs to begin when it comes to what does loneliness mean to someone in the respect to how does it work, in the respect to what do they do, and then how do they feel lonely, right? So I'll give you an example. Someone could be at the highest point in their career, but they may feel the loneliest, right? Now the question would come quite simply is how? How can you have that, right? Because surely at a point where you are at this top of the tree, you're this massive CEO, etc., how can you feel lonely, right? But I think there's a difference between socially lonely and emotionally and physically and mentally lonely, right? Which is, I know we're going to discuss today, and I don't want to talk too much on it before we get into it, but I think there's a massive disconnect sometimes between people's loneliness emotionally and then the physical or mental or connection in that respect. I mean, how from the work you do and how you build those, do you help people really understand that they could be lonely, or they maybe don't understand that they are, even though they are?
It's about the literary connection, and of course in ourselves as well. Sometimes we focus too much externally and we're not actually happy with our own company. And when we were forced to be lonely, literally physically on a basic level, was about we were sort of forced. And we don't sometimes like that force. We don't like that change. It's not our choice. So when we are in that position, we got to adapt. And sometimes we don't have the skill set to do that. So for example, in your case, let's say, COVID is obviously an example. How were you able to sort of have that, manage that? I mean, for example, the problem is that we're social animals, aren't we?
Yeah.
How did you find that? What's your experience?
I mean, I'm very lucky and I'm very fortunate and have been for a long time because I have a very strong bond with my mum, and because I still live at home, COVID didn't really get in the way of that to an extent. But I'm very aware that I'm very fortunate in that response. And that isn't the case with everyone. But what I did see in regards to loneliness was the community I had built across years beforehand in regards to business and friends and etc. There was that level of disconnect. And I think in general, especially now, maybe it's becoming slightly more known to be talked about, but I still think that there's so much concept in regards to what that gets to, right? So why does someone actually feel lonely? What ends up actually happening psychologically to them for them to feel that lonely stage, which I'm sure we'll get into. But I think the simple crux of it is just because you are, it's to an extent it's an oxymoron, because some of the time people will feel lonely, as I said in the intro, when they actually are surrounded by loads of people, but they actually feel very isolated and very lonely. But then also you have the other side of it, where people who are technically not socially connected to a lot of people also don't feel lonely at all, right? So I think it's about understanding what it is integral to you that makes you believe that you're lonely, right? And it kind of goes back into which I'm sure we'll get onto, the physical, mental, and emotional, because for each definition of those words has a different corresponding set of loneliness attached to it, right?
Well, and an interesting corresponding sets, like, for example, your vocation is to record, and that's a form of connection. And of course, face to face has a different impact on online as well. How have you found the kind of themes of loneliness and connection? But let's assume through the work you do, how does that sort of, have you got any sort of thoughts or examples of the most suitable and the most positive sort of ways that people can use it?
I think, pre-pandemic, we weren't in a world where people wanted connection or they needed it, I think is the better use of wording.
Yeah.
Because so much of our society was connected already. You had office environments, you had, the people you would see when you get coffee in the morning, etc. You would have all these like social interactions that maybe quote unquote were meaningless or were meaningful to you, but even in a really short point of view. And then COVID suddenly took that all away. And it was suddenly like, okay, what do we do now? But what I've noticed is there's been a rise in content creation and a rise in conversational pieces like this today, which was kind of going to happen anyway and was kind of starting to happen, but it really bubbled up in the pandemic because it was the only way we could actually connect. It was the only way we could really get to connect to people. And at that time it was digital, granted, but also it was about people, I think, having longer, meaningful connections, maybe having less of them, but having more meaning with those connections.
That's a really good point. And I think what I'd like to sort of come on to is that and you've mentioned at the beginning, but it's really important how we can categorize the theme of loneliness and this connection. It's not black and white, but for the case of our discussion, if we could sort of subcategorize it into physical loneliness, mental sort of impact of loneliness, and emotional. And you mentioned the social media as well. And of course, we got that lovely story, which I remember you talking about, is about why we built on social ways. Why do we have that need for connection? Can you explain that?
I mean, there's lots that I could go into, but from a really psychological and tribal point of view, our brain is designed to keep us alive. That's the first concept people need to understand, right? And by no means am I an expert on this, but I've done enough research, I've talked to enough people who are to understand what that means. And the crux of the reality is, as a creature, as a set of beings, we have to have social connection to survive in tribal times, because we are tribal creatures, right? Mm-hmm. So if I did something that got me thrown out of the tribe and I was then put in a lone situation, it was very likely I was going to die because I was going to get eaten by a tiger, or I wasn't going to be able to find enough water, or I wasn't going to be able to make enough heat or have enough shelter or deal with all of those really, really survival hunter-gatherer needs. Yeah.
We didn't have a car to get into.
We don't technically have anymore, but it's just a different concept, because the concept is now, do you own enough wealth to pay for heat, shelter, food, and all the other essentials of life? The core essentials of life haven't changed.
No.
And our social conditioning to us needing to be liked by the groups of people that we're around and being accepted into a tribe, so quote unquote, is still true, right? Yeah. Because our brains haven't developed beyond the point where it takes a long time for one to develop his or her brain to the point where they can move forward. Now, that doesn't mean even if you get to the point where you can push yourself outside your comfort zone, which I'm sure we'll get onto as well. Because there's also psychology behind that that's very similar, which is around why do we not want to do something that's uncomfortable, right? For you and potentially me a long time ago, having a conversation like this could have been felt uncomfortable. But because of the work I've done and the work I do, it's now it's in my comfort zone, right? But from a psychology point of view, what ends up happening is we don't do things outside of our comfort zone because we could die. We don't know the outcome. We don't have evidence in our head to say this isn't going to mean we die. We're going to be safe. If I do the things that feel comfortable and I do the things that I've always done, I'm then going to be in the position where, I'm going to be fine. Yeah.
Can I do an exercise with you about that? So what we're going to do, and this is for everyone, sort of anyone watching as well, have a go. I'm going to ask Carlton to do a gesture now, and maybe you can do the same. Carlton, could you fold your arms, please, together? Yeah? How do you feel?
Well, to an extent, I kind of know what this gesture is in regards to defensive.
Yeah.
So it's a
Okay.
defensive
Right.
gesture because I'm, and this is a body language thing as well, right? Because for anyone who you would speak to who has a lot of understanding of body language, I try to never do this in a conversation because it's a closed off.
Yes.
Because I'm locking
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
It's a protecting thing. I'm like, no, I'm not going to accept what you're saying.
Yeah, and it's interesting how this is linked to the theme of comfort and also change. We want to change when we're ready. So I'm going to ask you to do something. Okay, just do it without thinking. 1, 2, 3. Fold your arms of the way, and back, and forward, and back, and forward. Go faster. Back, forward, and stop. Now, I'm going to ask you: have you finished? I'm going to give you 3 options. The first way, a second way, or a third way. And I'm going to ask you guys as well. Maybe you can look at Carlton as well and see what he can, you think, and have a think. Maybe you've done it yourself. Carlton, which way do you think you've ended up? The first way, second way, or third way? So first way, second way, or you don't have a clue. That's really my third question.
Well, initially my brain went to the first way because that's just the easiest choice of a process of elimination. It would be the first way, right?
Yeah. And what happened is I think you did finish the first way, but sometimes when it's a lovely exercise to show we're not used to change and we don't like change, we want to be in control. So when you do it, people tend to go whoa, and even hands up behind their back, and it's a discomfort. But if you practice enough the second way, then that becomes the first way. And that's our point, is that the change, I think it's having communities to help us make that change in a comfort way, not feel isolated and not feel like we're about to be eaten on. And just one thing to add to that story you said, when we were Homo sapiens and we got made, we also had our arch rivals who were called the Neanderthals. They were bigger, they were smarter, they were stronger. And somehow we existed and they faded away. And the reason was because they couldn't get into groups bigger than 8, whereas we did. So whilst 1 on 1 would lose, 2 on 1 would lose, 8 of us against 1 of them, we had a chance, and then we took bigger. So interesting, exactly that point. We're social animals. The physical isolation is normal for us to feel that. But I'd like to also move on to that point you were making at the beginning, how isolation is actually, it's a kind of expectations, if I can add to that, how people might be in a group, in a company, in a big workspace, and they might, and this is actually not, it's a bit of a historical as well, but it's perhaps being exaggerated now. When you've got to return to work, all these new rules, you have to go to where you can't control that. And therefore some people might feel more isolated than had they been at home. Why do you think that? Have you any thoughts about why this physical isolation doesn't cure all the...
I think I think it goes back to understanding why one would feel isolated, right? Like, what are you isolated from? Yes. Sometimes we're isolated from physical connection.
Yep.
Okay, so it's a physical thing that I need to be connected with people who care about me, right? The other, another approach or another point of view could be that, okay, what about mentally or emotionally connecting with someone, right? Like, I'll give you an example. I haven't been in an intimate relationship in 3.5 years. Okay, so if I'm going to feel like I'm missing out on something, it would be a deep emotional, intimate connection with someone because I haven't had it in 3.5 years. Now, I'm aware of that, which is why it doesn't eat away at me, because I'm okay with that, because I understand why and when and how, to an extent, that will happen.
And can I add to that? It's your choice.
Yeah.
Stroke. That connection is your choice. You have that control. Yep.
And I think it's about being okay with that fact, right? Like, why we get emotional, why we get over the board, why we get concerned, etc., is because we can't cope, right? Once we rationalize why we're feeling the way we're feeling, then we can cope. right? Why was lockdown such a big deal for some people?
Yeah.
Because they were in a position where they had to have social contact with people who they otherwise weren't used to having social contact with, e.g. brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, etc. And or they were forced into a scenario where they were locked in their own room, not out of choice, right? Yeah. You locking yourself in your room when you were a teenager because that's your safe space, or that's the space where you enjoy or you escape or whatever, is fine because you're choosing. You can choose when you leave, right? But if you're in a situation where you're forced to stay put, it's different. This is where kind of the cabin feverish stuff kind of can start to take hold, because you can't change it, right? And a philosophy I've followed for a long time, which is why people say, oh, how can you keep growing a business? How can you keep growing? How can you keep do this? How can you keep finding work, etc. in an economy which is challenging, in a world which constantly seems to have stuff going on? Because I don't worry about the things I can't physically control, because I can't. And I don't want this to become political, but I can't control what happens with Russia. No. I can't control what happens with Ukraine. Of course, that's humanitarily horrible. No one's going to say that that's okay. And if they are, I won't get into that. Yes. But the principle is I can't control it. Nothing I can do outside of investing money and putting money and help in the way I can, or even talk about it and getting awareness around it, about it, saying, hey, this is not okay. Yeah. Outside that, I can't do anything.
So but that's a good point, and I'd like to lead on to the second category, because we've done the first subcategory, which is physical impact for loneliness, and now mental, because I'd like to sort of one step back, which is how physically actually our bodies have adapted quicker physically during this new state that we, this new technology, this new culture we have. But mentally, our brain is pretty much the same. And it focuses on things negatively, even though we're in a way to protect us. So whilst physically we're fine, we don't need to worry about being eaten, as you said, mentally our minds still react negatively to a lot of worries.
Well, our physiological response is the same, right?
Exactly. So we need to sort of cope with that. Now, in terms of that isolation, I think a key theme is mentally thinking, avoiding those thoughts, coping with those thoughts. And you were talking about how sort of at the beginning as well about your own a company. What are your thoughts about sort of managing that whilst you might be in a room, as you said, you might be in a room with lots of people, but you might feel quite isolated. What are your thoughts about sort of, I suppose, enjoying your own company or getting used to your own company as a starter whilst you got people around you? So on a mental sort of thinking side, how do you manage that?
I mean, I'm very, very lucky in the respect that I was brought up with what I would argue was the right values. And it was that you have to love yourself before you can love anyone else, right? And you'll understand why this is key to the question in a second, because the point for me is, if you, whether we're talking physical, emotional, or emotional, all of them, if you are physically content in your own demons, you're physically content in your own feelings, you're physically content in your own belief and your own self-worth and your own self-love, then it doesn't actually matter what the opinion of others are. Yes. Because you won't look for external validation. You won't look for those cues socially to be like, hey, am I liked? Hey, do I, etc., right? Or should I dress this way? Because what if such and such doesn't like me if I dress this way? But in a direct answering to the question, I had to work on, and even with great values that I got brought up with, I still had to deal with a lot of demons in the same way that a lot of others are. And, you know my story, so you know what those are. But the principle for me is you have to make a choice every day. Yeah. When you have mental health concerns, issues, etc., however you want to articulate it, and I say that with the utmost respect, you have to choose whether you're going to let this be the day where you start working through those, or another day where you just go, that's too scary, I'm going to put it into a box that I'm then going to forget about, or at least try to. And what I think can happen sometimes is it can get pent up. Yes. Because when we don't process things and we don't go through that to deal with it, and it's painful, right? It hurts to go through these things. whether that's a breakup, whether that's a relationship with a parent, whether that's a relationship with a partner, whether that's a relationship with a work colleague, whatever it is, a friend, etc. All of these things are true. If we don't go through that pain and that healing process, we can never truly forgive that relationship or that situation. Yeah. And it can then never become better.
That's a good point. And I think I like your summary about how, sort of not fighting and and sort of accepting, and that theme about it's okay. And saying to yourself, it's okay to be stressed. It's okay to have that worry. When you're lonely, it's okay to feel isolated. But the theme is to manage it. And I think add to that, take away the theme should. Carlton, you should actually be happy and smiling all the time. You should be coping with whatever rubbish is happening. I mean, I had this moment when I was undergoing my radiotherapy for my brain cancer treatment. And I remember I was actually, thankfully, physically well enough to play golf. And I was thinking, can I take my golf clubs into the radiotherapy ward with 40 other people waiting to be done while I waited? And my mind was saying, no way. My physical body was saying, go for it, Paddy. Of course you can, And my mind was saying, no, don't do that. You should not go into the radiotherapy place. And I walked down, and I ended up doing it. And everyone was sort of smiling and saying, well done. It's that mind stopping, labeling and thinking. And of course, cognitive disorders can kick in. And it's sort of, obviously, it's quite a big area in itself. But cognitive disorders are a way for your mind to protect. And you've got to accept that, haven't you? It's not fighting it and differentiating your mind and your thoughts. And just accepting that's who you are, and coping in the right way to know that your mind might not like the change, but it's okay. So that's a kind of a theme about thinking and sort of talking about it. What are your thoughts about talking about it? I love the irony is that we're talking about it now from a mental health to help manage your thoughts.
I mean, what I was just thinking about as you were talking there was thinking about when one has a concern, an issue, a problem, isn't part of the point. The first thing you have to do is acknowledge that you've got that problem, right? Yeah. Yourself, not to anyone else, not to anything else. You have to acknowledge that, okay, there's something wrong with me, or there's something concerning me, or I had a level of trauma, right? Now, when I say that, I don't mean I was beaten as a child. That might be. For me personally, it wasn't. It wasn't. I was sexually abused as a child. No, wasn't there either. Like that. When you say the word trauma, we're talking in a very specific case of whatever that act was, whatever that thing was, whatever that event was. It could be just something very, very negative. Now, of course, that's not to say it's the same as what I just described, because they're not. But from a physiological and mental response, it's the same. Your brain is going to treat it the same in respect to, no, I don't want to look at this. No, I don't want to talk about this. No, I don't want to. No, that hurts. No, that's painful. No, that's this. No, that's that. The key, in answer to your question, is if you can open it up and you can talk about it, and a problem shared is a problem cared about, right? Because it removes the burden. And I had a one-to-one this morning, and we were talking about the stress that happens with presentations. The reason why I bring it up here is the same thing happens. If you're presenting alone, everything's on you, right? But if you're presenting together, right, so here, because we're having a conversational-based piece of content, the stress on both of us is less. It's not just, I have to make sure I say the right thing, right? And that's why I think talking about it has to be the first point. And I think that if we're talking in a workplace environment, there has to be a culture and there has to be a world where it's okay, where there has to be, and I hate using the word safe space because I don't agree with the concept. I agree with the concept, but not the wording. But for me, there has to be a safe space. And what I mean by that is very simple. Paddy, I'm going to say that and this isn't true, but I'll use a really stupid analogy. Paddy, what you just said to me was really offensive. I don't like that. Okay, so the safe space would be you saying, okay, I appreciate what you're saying. Let's now have a conversation about how I can go about that differently. If it was employee-boss situation. A non-safe space environment would be, well, actually, I don't care and you're now fired.
And just to add to that, there's a difference between sympathy and empathy. What the focus needs to be is empathy. Whenever someone says that to you, you need to acknowledge it, but you don't take responsibility for that. Whereas sympathy is when you do that, is when you emotionally connect or you mentally connect with that person, even though that might not be the right thing to do. There's one other point, which is, I love the point sharing I'd like to cover, is about a theme called active listening. Like mental health, we haven't really been taught about it. So how can we look after ourselves when we've got mental worries? And is it okay to share it? Is it okay to think it as well? Everyone else seems happy. We spoke at the beginning about social media a bit. And of course, that is the exact answer. Like, should I always be positive? But listening is something where we need to be better at. We haven't been taught about mental health. We haven't been taught about listening. Were you ever taught how to listen at school?
No, not at school, no.
I was taught how to read, I was taught how to write, I was taught how to speak. I was never taught how to listen. Yet we use, according to Mental Health First in England, we use our listening 42% of our time. Yeah. The biggest interaction we have with someone. So when you're sharing, what are your thoughts about listening? And it could be you sharing an issue you have, but it could also be someone, you're listening to someone who's got that in that connection, in that conversation.
I think from my perspective anyway, a lot of what has come from that is because I do podcasting, because I do interviewing, because I am an interviewer. I've had to develop the skill of listening, right? But what I've actually had is having a more meaningful connection with every person I talk to, because I'm truly understanding and truly listening. I'm not kind of, okay, Paddy, I'm kind of listening to you, but I'm over here on my laptop doing my emails.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the camera there.
Etc. Right?
And I'm not happy.
But the thing is, like, why do people do that? We distract ourselves because we don't like having the uncomfortable conversation, right? Like, if someone who I work with or you or whoever, I'm like, that doesn't sit right with me, or something you did or said doesn't sit right with me, you're not going to know unless I articulate it to you, right? Like, I'll give you just a really simple analogy that everyone can connect with. If you being late pisses me off, the only way you're going to know it pisses me off is if I tell you it pisses me off, right? But then I have to reciprocate the response and listening and understanding. Yes. Okay, well, why in this case were you late? Yeah. Because it could have been something completely out of your control. Understanding,
taking just to add to that, frame of reference. Yeah. You take your mind, you don't translate to how you would, you've got to understand what that person has been doing. Yeah.
And you've got to say, okay, so I appreciate that me showing up late is important, or is important to you because it upsets you, it annoys you because your time's valuable. Okay, fine. So I apologise, but this is the reality, right? But by starting that conversation and actually truly listening, you then remove all of the tension, all of the issue, all of the like passive aggressive stuff that could build up. And I use this as a really easy analogy, but the same is true in your relationships. The same is true as any relationship you have, whether that's work, whether that's personal, whether that's with your parents, etc. Because you're in the position where otherwise it's just going to pent up and explode, right? Like as we were talking about before, when people don't follow their dreams or follow whatever it is they're looking to do, the issue comes is because they have this sense of calling and this sense of need that they're not fulfilling, right? Like people say to me, oh, you know, has there been bad times where you haven't had the money to pay all the bills you need to pay for, etc.? Yes, all the time, right? But the reality of the fact is I'm aware of it, it's part of the process, and I ask myself, okay, well, what did I do to help this situation become better? And did I ignore the situation? Have I spoken to the people I owe money to? Have I explained the situation, etc.? And or what would I do in a role reversal situation, right? If it was completely tables flipped, how would I be empathetic to that person? What would I do to help them? And actually, at the end of the day, it being a couple of days late, is that the end of the world? It being even a week late, is that the end of the world? No, it might be. Right, it actually might be. But you have to open up the conversation first.
Well, exactly, and that's how you, for example, is a very good sales technique as well. How you listen, how you open up the conversations, how you demonstrate to the other person that you actually understand what they're doing and why you're talking about the subject, their attitude, and it's being empathetic, as we said as well before. I'd like to also go on to the third area of what we discussed. We've done physical health, the impact from loneliness. We've done mental as well, about thinking, but emotional as well. There's definitely a feeling, and that's one of the key words, which in fact is connected to all these things, but it's something we haven't had to discuss so much now. But a feeling has such a big impact, a feeling of being overwhelmed, a feeling that your stress, what you're going under, I mean, it can all add up. As I said at the beginning of the talk, I'm a mental health first aid England instructor, and you talk about the stress container. When you got stressed, you got to put stuff in. In the morning, it's quite empty, like an empty tank, and you put stuff in, you get more stress, and you try and hold it in and if you're not careful and if you don't manage it, then it gets full and it's got to literally burst down. That's where burnout is. People are, I'm fine. I had this with my cancer before I was diagnosed. I was like, I'm fine. And the thing there is that the feelings are the ones where immediately it's the most susceptible sort of element you have with the health, is that you feel like it's higher than it is. And of course you need to manage it. You need to have what we call in mental health first in England, you have a tap at the bottom. What can open that tap to help you control all those words, through connection, through your choice, control that stress. And if you don't, then you're burning out, literally out. And of course, the feeling does over-exaggerate it as well. So what are your thoughts about the feelings of, let's say, loneliness? And even though you might be in a group of people, you might have 25 likes on a post you've done. Does that do enough for the feelings? Is it artificial, perhaps? Too much or too little?
I think there's lots of approaches that I could go here, but the approach I will take is very simple. A lot of what I do and a lot of what I'm sure you do is down to instincts, right? So where do instincts come from, right? Yeah. Instincts come from our experience mixed with then our brain theorizing what's going to happen, right? So if I know me walking into this room doesn't kill me, my instinct will be, okay, cool, I can walk into this room, it doesn't kill me. Great, fantastic. But in answer to specifically the question, I think it's about being true to yourself, firstly, and understanding, okay, yeah, I do feel this way. Yeah. But then also understanding, why do I feel this way in respect to, I'll use the like analogy. Facebook is specifically designed, Instagram is specifically designed, TikTok specifically designed to grab attention, right? And whether this is morally grey or not is up to the audience to decide. But the fact of the matter is, those platforms give you an endorphin hit, right? And for those who don't know, an endorphin hit is that happiness feeling, that excitement feeling, that oh my god. So for me, I always do this exercise, and it's an exercise that I've recently started really using in my life, because I found that I was getting... So I haven't had noise from my phone in 4 years, which is a weird concept for most people who are used to their phone making noise, right? But what ends up happening eventually is you pull this concept of actually turning your app notifications off as well. And it's something which I've actually built up to doing now, where no social media app can actually send a notification through to my tray. And the reason why is for two. When you're a social media manager, you have access to a lot of accounts, which means you're going to get notifications all the time, right? Even if it's not from your own account, you're still going to get notifications. That takes my attention away from what I'm trying to do. And that's the difference, I think, and that's why I think it's really key and really important. Once you are completely within your own balance in respect to your... I could go really zen-y and stuff, and I won't. But, once you're in balance with that, you don't want that. You're very limited with who you give your time and energy and attention to, because it's the only two resources that you have complete control of and only a limited amount of. Right? We all have a certain amount of time on the planet, and we all have a certain amount of what we can give our attention to. Limited. Right? So building off what the stress situation is really, really simply, something which I've done this year specifically, is I've built twice a day into my routine that are non-negotiable, so this happens no matter what happens, is a point in the morning and a point in the evening where I can completely empty that tank. So there's lots of things you can do. Exercise is great because it reduces the cortisol in your brain, which is the stress hormone. Meditation is good. Visualization is good. Just having a chat or getting outside, feeling the sun, feeling the, etc., getting off your devices. So on, so on, so on.
And just to add to that, all those things which we discussed in terms of the physical side, the mental side, which you said,
Yeah.
you're allowing yourself to sort of step away.
Yeah, and I think for anyone who is struggling with that in regards to especially looking at emotional, you have to ask yourself, what do you want to feel every day? Do you want to feel the sense of stress, dread, importance, or do you want to feel as in importance as in I need to get this psychological response from my boss because otherwise he's going to be upset with me? Or do you want to have a level of fulfillment within yourself? Do you want to have a level of peace or calm or clarity within yourself? Do you want to have this level of, actually, I'm okay.
But the challenge is, or just to add to that, how do you know when that's got that? For example, what are your thoughts? Because I'd love to hear what you think. Because sometimes people don't know what to expect. It's easy to put on paper.
I think it's so personal, so it'd be wrong of me to say, this is what you have to feel and this is how you do it, because that'd be wrong, because I'm not everyone else. I can talk personally. For me, when I feel, this is okay. Where I am is okay. Everything's going to be cool. This thing's stressing me out, but that's fine. That's cool, right? And then also in the hindsight of that, in the same feeling, oh wow, I've got this amazing conversation with Paddy today. That's great, right?
Yeah.
But being okay and understanding with all of those things within the day, and being okay with the fact that, there's things I'm stressing about. There's things I need to do. There's things I need to work on. But again, moving back to something I talked about earlier, what are those things can I control? Can I control when someone pays a bill? Outside of asking them nicely to pay the bill and asking and having that conversation with them about where that bill is. No. I can't physically put a gun to their head and say you need to pay the bill. And also, arguably, just for clarity, you shouldn't over push, because whether there is or isn't a reason, it might be they've forgotten. It might be because they're also having cash flow issues. There might be 1,000 different reasons, none of which is on you, and none of which is a personal relationship with you and that person's relationship. But people do business with people, right? Just move it back into my realm really quickly. If you're going to do business with people, you have to be transparent and you have to be honest. And the more honest and transparent you can be with people about the problems that you're surviving, the actual more respect I found you get. Because it's like, hey, this is, I personally would like, just use the payment analogy that we were talking about before. Hey, I would love to pay you right now, but I can't because XYZ. Right? And it's, for me, there's a massive difference between they can't pay and they won't pay, for example, right? And I don't want this all to become around finance, but and the reason why I use it is because it's something that's very relatable very quickly, because everyone, to an extent, has had a form of their life, whether they have it right now or not, is different, but they have a level of their life which is around financial concern or financial debt, whether that's for a parent, whether that's yourself personally, and if you haven't had that yet, you probably will.
And I think on that point, it's very relevant, because finance has a reputation for breaking relationships and for that falseness, and sort of that focus goes away from that connection with another human being to, which is what drives us to the cash. And of course that can, normally, you've heard of, I've got friends, one of my ushers, when I got married, he fell out with his best man because they actually took a bit of a jump and started a business together, and they completely fell out. And of course the impact has just gone. He was a godfather. So it's interesting to know how you're going to cope with that. When I talk about coping and the emotions, because in fact it's a feeling. It doesn't mean it's not a fact. And I think it's managing your mind, your body, literally all connected, to say it's okay. And to say that's not the reality perhaps. And in my workshops, I talk about the circle of strength. So when I asked you what helped you, you're very good. You made it very, you said in an objective way, it's not me, but I'm different to everyone else. And a circle of strength, people will have different things that help them cope and give them strength. So for example, journaling is very good. When you end of the day and you have your mind is telling you you failed, you haven't done this, no one's contacted you, you feel lonely, I'm going to go to bed. I suggest is that you just journal or just jot 3 things that have gone well, and before you know it, you'll do 4 or 5. Because you realize, oh, well, that person actually got back to me. That person at least gave me a response. I run my own business, so I have a lot of stress. Having to know, literally for the whole working funnel of, converting from approaching people to managing it to following up to doing the work and finishing it. A bit like your work as well. There's always something to complain about. And your mind, something called automatic negative thoughts, ANTS, ants, focus on that. And you've got to take yourself away and say, no, it hasn't been as bad as, your mind, as we say, the key thing is your mind tries to protect you. It hasn't evolved as quickly as our physical bodies. So how can we manage those feelings and work forward? So that was brilliant. So just to summarize, we discussed the physical health, about the impact of loneliness, the mental side about thinking when you feel lonely. You can be next to someone but feel lonely, and then emotional as well. That was a lovely way. Now I'd like to summarize it, and I think one way is obviously that theme of connection and how they are connected together, like we're connected here. Now I have another journey I'd like to take you on. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And this is another one for you guys who are listening or watching to have a go as well, okay? So the best way is that if you close your eyes. I'm going to take you on a journey, okay? And I want you to imagine that you're in your kitchen. And on the kitchen is a lemon. And you go over to the lemon, it's on a chopping board, and next to the chopping board is a knife. Cut open half of the lemon with that knife, and then put everything down. Then take one of the halves that you've cut and cut a slice from it, quite a thick slice. You can feel it in your fingers. You can actually even smell some of that sour smell. Pick up that slice, put the knife down, and bring it up, and you can see it's quite shiny in the kitchen. And I want you to bring it up, and then you can see the drops falling down. And bring it closer to your mouth. You can smell it. It's quite hard now. Open your mouth. Shove it in. Shut your mouth. And then bite. Bite. You can feel the rind. Oh, hard, but the soft juice under your tongue. You can really feel it sort of working quite hard all around your mouth. Now, open your eyes, Carlton. Do you have extra saliva in your mouth?
Yeah.
Do you have a lemon in your mouth?
Well, not that I'm aware of anyway.
But your mind has that power in the physical side of your body. And that is how connection, and a lovely summary of what we've been talking about. Our mental, our physical, our own personal, emotional side are all connected. We need to look after them all together. When I was going through my treatment of cancer, and even now with my help, I need to not just tick a box for my physical health, but my mental health as well. But also how connecting we are. That connection drives us. We are social animals, aren't we? So it's a lovely little exercise to do that. So I hope you can practice tonight with your friends and family as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So could you summarize as well any feelings about the themes we're talking about, the loneliness or how to manage that? What does it mean? Is it okay to be lonely? And that connection, that word.
I think that from a summary point of view, I think the crux of it is very simple. Be integral to yourself, understand and be completely honest with what you need, right? So if that is you need a hug from your mum or dad, that's fine. Now, if they're unfortunately passed away, that might be challenging, but you need to be okay with yourself in the respect to understanding that's what you need, because then you know what you're striving towards. Then you know, if you are in a job where 100% that, like I was like, this isn't my calling, this isn't what I connected with, this isn't what I'm trying to pursue, this is a moment in my time or a moment in my life where I need to get through this to have things to learn from, have customer service in mind, have things I need to do to build a bank of money so I can do this leap into the thing I'm really passionate about and care about. Okay, again, being integral to yourself and understand why you're doing it. I think as it links into all of these things that we discussed today, I think in summary, it's simply about, as I say, being honest with you and being honest with your own self, no matter how hard that may be.
Thank you. Thank you. And so moving forward, I think the words that come to mind are especially with loneliness, but it's having the choice to connect. And we have more choice. We have more options. It's a choice to connect with ourselves, as you were saying. Enjoy our own company. Give ourselves the last roller, that theme, and to connect. That will connect with ourselves, our health, but also externally with our colleagues. All those C's as well kick into play. So I hope you find that helpful. If you want to get in touch with anything, please let me know. And again, thank you so much, Carlton, for a lovely chat. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you took some things away that were useful. If you're interested to know more or just want to chat with me, please get in touch with me. And I'll be happy to have a call with you and to discuss more for yourself, your company, your family, anyone you want to know more about. Take care.